Hello, and welcome to another episode of Myths and Stories, a Destiny 2 lore podcast. This week, we are continuing our dive into the lore surrounding the latest episode Echoes. Last
Echo, 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 echo.
last episode, we focused on kind of the story that was told throughout Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, the kind of mainline narrative of the episode, and went over kind of the events that happened, our thoughts surrounding it, all that good stuff. And now we are getting into some of the things that dropped alongside that episode. The first being a lore book by the name of Polyphony.
Polyphony. Is this a
And
real word myth?
this is a real word. This is a real word used in music, and is a
Okay.
style of simultaneously combining a number of musical parts, each with their own melody, to form a harmony with one another.
This little choir and conductor chorus thing
Yep.
is coming together.
Yep, very much a lot of musical reference in this episode. So yeah, we are looking at Polyphony, which unlocked, I believe, with each step of the acts as you went through.
Yeah. Each one like the weekly, like go do the stuff this week and then we'll see you next week type thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it seems to center mainly around failsafe and some of the things that she was doing outside and during kind of the main story arc of the episode, and some of the interactions that she had with other people during that time. And yeah, so we're gonna read through this and see what Failsafe was up to during the time that we were off fighting the Conductor.
She wasn't just chilling in the helm the whole time, was she?
I mean, there was a lot of that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that.
This is what happens when you're a golden age AI and you have no body. Like you are just kind of stuck wherever you're stuck.
Yeah.
And poor Failsafe was stuck on Nessus for so long. She was so happy when she was uploaded to the helm at the beginning of the season. She was like, I was so like all of her little talks like made me feel like so depressed because I was like, I really feel as bad. Thank you, Failsafe, for making me feel like worse of a person for not coming and visiting you all these years.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
Polyphony, polyphone. Fuck. This book, yeah, it does seem to be a lot about Failsafe, and like what she was doing while we were doing our missions, and so that's why the previous episode we really wanted to kind of create a baseline of like, hey, this is what the season was. This is what happened during the season. And then everything that we got with those, being this book and all of the gear and exotics and whatnot that all have lore entries on it, they're all kind of like supplemental stuff of like, hey, what was so-and-so doing? What was this guy doing? What was that girl doing? So yeah, we figured we'd start here with this book and yeah, rock and roll with it. So Myth, let's rock and roll with it.
Alrighty. So, chapter 1 is titled Impact. And this one goes like this: Impact, aft fuselage. The alert roused Failsafe from power saving mode. She reflexively brought the lights up to full, engaged the warning system, and sent a request for complete Exodus Black system information. Generating status report, Captain, she said blearily as her optics flickered to life, displaying the empty catwalks and canted wreckage around her mainframe. Oh, she said. Right. Failsafe canceled the system information request and dismissed thousands of prompts to connect to a navigation network that had not existed for centuries. She took a deep draw of reserve power to clear her head. Low power alert, 4%. And activated her external optics. She scanned the available channels. The hull integrity system remained linked to her mainframe, despite most of the Exodus Black itself being scattered over a vast debris field. It still read Integrity, 0%. She ignored the centuries-old warning and focused her aperture on motion along her periphery. A group of fallen vandals were prying the plating from a distant section of her crumpled fuselage. "Oh, my suffering never end," Failsafe groaned half-heartedly to herself. She scanned the nearby area for Guardian activity. Nothing. She wasn't surprised. It had been a while since a Guardian had done much more than stop by to ask if she knew where Zur was. She would have to fend for herself. Failsafe scrolled through her available systems. Defense systems, offline. Energy shielding, offline. Automated turrets, offline. Magnetic barrier, compromised. Cargo winch, compromised. Communications, online. A handful of fallen weren't worth a distress call to the Vanguard. If she called the tower every time the locals scavenged nanite tubing from her wreckage, they'd revoke her comm access. The comm systems. Failsafe spun up a deep space broadcast and prepared to send a message into empty space. 21, no, 23 degrees off from Ganymede. A communications dish on which was once the starboard side of the Exodus Black creaked into position, reflecting a hazy patch of light down onto the Vandals as it locked onto place. A devious stratagem that would increase the ambient temperature by as much as 3 degrees Celsius over the next 20 minutes. "Burn and die," Failsafe hissed quietly, while the Vandals did no such thing. As she disabled the external optics with a defeated sigh, a small icon on her status feed grabbed her attention. A new message. Failsafe opened the communication ravenously, and it was only with moderate disappointment that she realized it was a text-free request. Pt.1 was seeking access to the Exodus Black's old shader archive. She should at least reply, Failsafe figured. She sighed internally and routed power toward the dusty rack housing her array of socialization filters and etiquette protocols. She winced as currents crackled across the worn cables. Low power alert, 4%. But soon, an ancient platter drive whirred to life. Failsafe initiated a response. "Hey," she dictated. "Yeah, if you want to help Guardians play dress-up, you can have all my old stuff." Her filter happily translated Failsafe's thoughts into a form it calculated was more acceptable to the recipient. "Bonjour, Ada Unit," the filter typed cheerfully. "Your dedication to Guardian aesthetics is quite commendable. Your request has been approved." As Failsafe reviewed the polished words, her processor made a dissatisfied grinding noise. She overrode the protocols and manually deleted the carets and underscore, then the exclamation points, then the patronizing greeting. She paused and then deleted the rest of the message, and instead approved Ada's request without comment. The bright 1 on her status feed changed to a gray 0, aligning perfectly with the burn-in on the screen. "Impact, aft, fuselage." The Vandals were doubtless going after another piece of plating. "Procreate," Failsafe heard herself say brightly, and then she realized she was still powering her protocol banks. She rerouted the energy towards her external optics. The Vandals had indeed moved on to another fragment of her ruined hull. She saw them pull a piece of her ceramic insulation aside and begin savaging the wiring underneath. And then suddenly, they stopped, and their gazes fixed on the sky. Object approaching. And a flash of bright light blinded Failsafe's feed. Localized impact, an alert blurred. An object had struck Nessa's surface at incredible speed, and a series of tremors rattled Failsafe's weathered stabilizers. The planet fell eerily quiet for a long moment. Now this, Failsafe thought, might be something worth calling in. And that's the end of that one.
You have no idea how hard it was to not laugh so many times during this. This is great. I love when Failsafe feels so alive in this entry. Like, okay, so at the beginning, like it's just a fucking Tuesday for her, right? Like she's like, great, I'm still here, nobody's around, this place sucks.
Yeah.
Failsafe obviously is part of the colony ships that were pushed out from Earth during the Golden Age, and she crash landed on Nessus, and so of course her whole fuselage is scattered across like 3 zones and a strike. Um, and yeah, so she keeps getting these low power alert 4%. Well, of course, because there's fucking nothing left of her out here, and she sees these vandals, and this this just completely fucked me up, honestly. Uh, so she starts off with like, okay, like this sucks. Like vandals are screwing with me. And then when she even mentioned like, uh, she scanned for nearby guardian activity, nothing. She wasn't surprised. It's been a while since a guardian had done much more than stop by and ask her if she knew where Zur was. That was hilarious. Then she's going through like all of her systems. She gets to the automated turrets, and there's like a little side note here. It's like, how long had it been since she had working turrets? 300? 400 years? She could barely remember it. I'm like, damn it, failsafe. Yeah, why? She goes through all these systems, right? Finally gets to communications. She's like, wait a second, the comm systems. I can do some of this. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay. She's gonna send out a little call thing. No, 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 no. She turns the dish into a magnifying lens to try to burn the vandals like ants on an anthill. And then says, burn and die. Like, I lost it there. I had fought everything there to not just start laughing hysterically. But yeah, 3 degrees Celsius over 20 minutes. I'm 99% sure the vandals aren't going to feel that, and they're not going to care.
Yeah.
Like, this is a very ineffective anthill burning thing. And then, like I said, it goes on through the thing, and yeah, then she gets an email. She's like, oh sweet, somebody wants to talk to me, and it's just Ada asking for shader stuff. And then like she failsafe responds with like, yeah, whatever, if you want to help guardians play dress off, you can have all my old shit, like I don't care. And but then the filters are still on, so then it corrects it to like, the bonjour Ada unit, your dedication to it's really nice thing, your request has been approved, and it's got the little like carrot happy eyes
Yeah.
face.
Yep.
And she sees that and starts deleting it. She's like, no, 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 deletes the whole message, just approves it, turns into a gray. And then like the little thing here with like the burn in on the screen, I thought that was a cute little like
Yeah.
you know thing. And then something happens, impact aft fuselage. And it's really screwed me up too, because it says the vandals were doubtless going after another piece of plating. Procreate, failsafe heard herself say. No, no, no. Her protocol brakes are on, so she just said, fuck! And that was it! That every time Bungie does something like that, I absolutely fall in love with the writing again, because they're cute. They're little things that like you don't really like, you read it and you're like, wait a second, did she just do what I think she did? And she absolutely did.
Yep.
So yeah, so this is all of this is happening. Again, this is just a Tuesday for her. Or I guess let's see here. When did we actually defeat the Witness? Was that a Friday?
Sure.
I'm trying to think when the
The
raid went
raid
live.
the raid went live on a Friday. Yeah.
But it wasn't defeated until the next morning on Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
So this is a Saturday morning for her, right? And then out of nowhere, like the last like 3 little lines here, this is where like everything starts happening, and she starts like, shit starts happening. The Vandals stop doing what they're doing. They look up at the sky. They see something. Something hits. We know that was the echo that came off of the Witness and slammed into Nessus. And now, okay, there's an impact. Stuff is happening. Like something is going on. The tremors started, and you can even see that in game. Like tremors are literally like rattling the surface of Nessus. If you stand still in one spot long enough, your screen will start getting like dust particles, and it'll start shaking and stuff. And so now failsafe is like, oh, this is something. I actually will call this in. I will stop, burning ants on a hill and cursing in politeness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, one thing that stood out to me that I wanted to point out, I said she winced as currents cracked across the worn cables, but soon an ancient platter drive whirred to life. You're telling me the
Is that a hard
golden
disk?
age isn't on SSDs for everything? Like,
That's
come
what I
on.
was thinking too.
Come on.
Like, wait, a triple lifespan. We're still using disk drives. What is going on? I've got solid states in my computer now. Okay, if we think about it, no, because the beginning of Destiny 1 is supposed to, like, technically, like, when the Traveler first shows up and we find it on Mars in that original cutscene, that's supposed to be like 2014,
Yeah. Yep.
right? And so, like, obviously the Golden Age has expanded way past that. So yeah, 2014. I'm 99% sure I had solid states. Yeah, no, I know for a fact I did, because I built the two computers for myself and my wife, and they were all solid state drives then. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's no way a Golden Age check using nanites. They have freaking SIVA on this thing, and they're still using hard disk drives. What is going on here?
Yeah. So, like, on one hand, whoever built the Exodus ships, like, really cheaped out.
Hey, lowest bid, man. If it's a
You
government,
know,
if it's a government ran program, this
Yeah.
is lowest bid all day long.
And I guess on the flip side, though, it had to be pretty good because it's still
It's still
working
fucking
however many hundreds of years later.
It survived a crash and still worked.
Yeah.
Like,
So, I don't know.
I'm reminded of the radar systems that I worked on in the military. They still use tapes.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was like 2004, 2009, somewhere in there. We were still using tapes that had been designed and built in the 60s. So yeah, sometimes if shit works, the military is like, no, it works. And again, I'm not going to equate the colonization program of the Exodus system to a military operation, but a lot of the same systems kind of cross over.
Yeah.
And if Clovis Bray had his hand in any of it, of course, it's a military operation.
Right. Yeah. Though he was a private company. So
PMCs.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't that just drive home a lot of logic for Clovis Bray?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, so yeah, this is kind of, the initial impact of the Echo and failsafe, kind of being happy, like not knowing what it was. It's just like, oh, an emergency, I can talk to people now.
Something happened,
which is a tad funny, but also kind of sad.
It's like, again, this whole entry is just very depressing. The highlight of her day was burning vandals with, like, ants.
Ineffectively burning vandals.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we now come to the second chapter here, which is isolated incidents. And these are all reports that are being filed, or excerpts from reports that have been filed to the VanNet encryption system. So likely a Guardian updating field reports to the Vanguard. And these are all on Nessus. And they all are using keywords to, like, determine what reports are being shown. This is kind of like someone is searching the reports is the vibe. And look, so of those it says location Nessus, keywords Vex, neck, collar, mantle, yoke, harness. So someone has gone through all of the Nessus Vanguard reports that have those keywords in them to generate a list of a number of events. And so going through those events, it goes like this. Incident Report 29. Location Well of Flame. I had a hobgoblin in my sights, but some weird lights around its neck distracted me. The thing must have caught a glint off my optics because it looked right at me. Instead of opening fire, it juked backwards and ran. Never seen a Vex run before. And honestly, I was so surprised I'd missed my shot. I lost track of it by the radiolaria pools near the Well of Flame. Incident Report 171. Location Artifact's Edge. Saw a big old Vex Minotaur hanging out in the shallows. It was far down range, but it looked like it was leaking data or something from its neck. I fired before my box breathing kicked in, so it wasn't a kill shot. It looked back at me. Then it popped its own juice box and dumped itself into the radiolaria. Definitely creepy, but I guess it's a good way to make a clean escape. Incident Report 2507. Location Well of Flame. One of those sleek precursor models was leading a group of normal Vex goblins. The goblins all had glowing collars, but the precursor didn't. They were moving in a regimented military structure. One of the goblins stepped out of formation, and the lead precursor glared at it. I've never seen a Vex break formation. Didn't even know they could do that. Incident Report 4852. Location Virgo Conduit. My fire team was ambushed by 3 Minotaurs and a group of Hydras a bit outside of the Well of Echoes. I noticed they had collars of light radiating out from them, and we'd heard to keep an eye out for those things, so we were taking the fight slowly. The Minotaurs were being really defensive, staggering their shields to cover each other. If you've ever gone up against a team of Titans in Crucible, it was a lot like that. Eventually, our hunter went down to some stray Hydra fire, and the moment her ghost appeared to res her, the Minotaurs charged. I swear they were trying to go after the ghost. Took all we had to fight them back. You told us to report any aberrant behavior, so there you go. We're actually going to pause there before we do the other incident reports here, because there's a theme here that's worth discussing a little bit.
Titans are dicks in Crucible?
Well, okay.
No. Groups of Titans are dicks in Crucible. No. Yeah, no, like obviously we're seeing a lot of that collar, right? Like they still don't know what is going on. Like obviously
Right.
now we have an idea, or we know more what's going on now. But in the beginning here, this was a very confusing thing. And like we even the first couple of weeks of the season, way back at the beginning of Act 1, we were seeing this. We were seeing Vex just doing weird shit. And like, I mean, the one that really like threw me off was the one that popped its own juice box
Yeah.
and just dumped itself back into the radiolaria. Like, that's weird. Like creepy and weird. But then like even the other ones, like the one that like it looked and then like juked and backed off, and then the other one where like it stepped out of line and then the thing glared at it and it like went back into formation. Like it stepping out of line, we're seeing a level of individuality here. And that was kind of the thing that we saw evolving as the season went on. This is just kind of like the first inklings of it, and it's not normal for Vex to have individuality. It's just
Right.
it's not normal at all. Vex are a type of hive mind almost.
Yeah, a collective mind is what it's been
Yeah.
referred to as.
Yep. And so like for them to have a single unit do something out of place or whatever, out of order, out of whatever, it's just it shouldn't be happening. Like not that it can't happen, it should not be. And I guess technically it can't happen because of the way that the Vex mind the Vex are structured as
Right.
on a thinking level.
So
So yeah.
yeah, it brings up a couple of questions, and this isn't something we super touched on in our season, kind of like when we were talking about the episode storyline in general, because it was never the focus within the storyline per se, outside of a couple of bits of dialogue here and there. But the thing that the Echo of Control did was not only give physical control to Maya over the radiolaria and the Vex in general. and then eventually other, organic life, as we saw with Ikora. But it allowed her to like give the Vex the ability to have individuality. And
Yeah.
there's a lot to explore there, because Vex traditionally acting as a collective mind means that every Vex knows what every other Vex is thinking at any point in time forever.
Yeah.
And by giving them the ability to form their own independent thoughts and reactions and potentially emotions, like the one that ran away maybe ran away because it was scared.
Right.
Like the ability to give the Vex that, I would say, must mean that you have also disconnected those Vex from the greater collective.
Or what if the opposite is true and they're still connected? Now the Vex are seeing an anomaly. They're like, hey,
Yeah.
this thing has an emotion. What is emotion? They don't know how to define things like that.
Yeah, the collective as a whole, for sure. I'm going back to like the one that stepped out of line. Like,
Sure.
if it was connected in a way that allowed it to know the movement patterns of all of the Vex around it as if it were its own thoughts, I don't know that it would have been possible for it to step out of line, which makes me
Oh,
think that like
sure.
maybe in
They
order
have been
to
disconnected,
become
possibly.
individuals, they have to disconnect from the collective.
So we could be seeing again this throughout the entire season. This just being the start of it in these entries here, but throughout the season we could be seeing a true um, uh, disconnection. What would you call that? Subsect
Yeah.
of Vex, similar to the Soul Divisive. But now the Soul Divisive is still connected to the like
Yeah.
all the different Vex are still connected to the main Vex, right? The Soul Divisive are just like because that's one thing that confuses me about the Soul Divisive themselves is are they disconnected and following their own pattern, their own like, hey, we're in the Black Garden and so we found this thing, this paracausality, and it's changed us, and so now we worship it. Like, are they actively disconnected from the rest of the Vex, or is that feed still is that upload download link still happening?
I think the pathways for that upload and download are there, but what has happened is the greater collective has like firewalled them off. Uh,
Oh, okay, sure.
and has essentially said like they can keep doing their upload and download within the Soul Divisive, but
We're not going to integrate it into our
the greater
main,
collective has been
yeah.
like, we're walling off that connection, so you cannot interface with everybody else. You're just in your own little
Gotcha.
pocket.
You can't, according to the Vex, corrupt the rest of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Whereas here we're seeing an actual like terminals are getting unplugged.
Yeah.
Like Vex are becoming individuals. They are literally getting disconnected from the system.
Yeah, which because in the Soul Divisive, they still have that ability to know what all the other Vex in the Soul Divisive are, thinking and experiencing at any given time. The question this brings up is, if they are disconnected from the collective, they are becoming individuals in and of themselves that have their own thoughts and feelings and, potentially hopes and fears. Does that also mean they are now experiencing time for the first time in a
Oh
linear
my
way?
god. Dude, this is really this is a bigger deal than I thought.
Like, there's a lot of
There's a
potential
lot happening there.
implications.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it
Okay.
just some interesting ideas that, like, depending on, knowing that spoilers, I guess, knowing that the episode ended with Maya and the Echo of Control still out there, potentially doing whatever it is they're going to do. Uh, there is a ever growing opportunity for there to be a like a free thinking Vex species that kind of
That's
evolves out of
That's
this.
well, and we talked about that too. Like we started seeing the future frames that were coming out of the radial
Yeah.
area that that it seemed like Maya was creating those, And so again, that could truly be where the future frames come from. We could be seeing that now in our active timeline. Um, but man, that idea of like there's an ever growing threat that the Vex it's I look at it almost like a um God, it's almost like a corruption of a hard drive, right? Like it starts in one area and just starts spreading.
Yeah.
And if that keeps going through the Vex network, we could see an entire breakdown of the entire Vex network. And that's dangerous.
It is, but it would maybe open up an opportunity for us that if all the Vex, if they truly disconnect from the network and they disconnect from their like ability to experience time all at once, then that also makes them a will eventually, if it happens to the entire network, will take them from being a kind of insurmountable threat to one that could be ultimately defeated,
Yeah,
because they lose access to that level of knowing the outcome of things before they kind of happen.
dude, this is there's a lot more depth in here than I realized.
So, but yeah, so we continue on with a couple of other reports here that kind of further solidify some of this. So it goes on. Incident report 8506. Location Watcher's Grave. I was running a patrol on Nessus when I saw some Vex with glowing symbols on their necks. They're trying to activate one of their big portals. Suddenly it turned on and a bunch of other Vex came out. The first Vex looked surprised and beeped at each other or whatever. Then both groups opened fire. The necklace Vex were wiped out, and the others ripped the radiolaria cores from the bodies and took them back through the portal. Or they would have if I hadn't thundercrashed the whole group. Incident report 7210 A3. Location the cistern. Cleared a group of Vex crouched around the base of a milk waterfall. Saw them clearly before I engaged. Some precursors mixed in with Nessus Vex. Nessus ones had the glowing mantles from the reports, but precursors didn't. Anyway, when I moved in to make sure they were dead, I saw little model buildings in the dirt. I'm telling you, they were building sandcastles. Incident report 2447C1. I was up on a ridge collecting data lattice for Rahul, and I spotted a single Vex hobgoblin below, just watching me. At first, I thought it was damaged because it had a bunch of bright interference around its neck and was moving kind of funny, but its suspension was loose. But right as I was about to draw, the hobgoblin waved its hand at me. I figured it was signaling an ambush, and I looked around, but I didn't have any backup. It waved again, and I gave a wave back. I didn't see the harm. Well, it got real excited at that and then waved with both arms, but then a Titan came speeding past on their Sparrow, hopped off, and blasted it to hell. Probably thought they were doing me a favor. And the final incident report 124K7 from Artifact's Edge. I was passing through that dark, wooded area just northeast of the LZ, and I saw something shining in one of the big trees. I got closer and saw a Vex goblin with something glowing around its neck. It was creeping through the branches and making a little noise, almost like it was laughing, if that makes sense. I threw a storm grenade up there, and I'm pretty sure I got it, but I couldn't see for sure. I thought I should report it anyway. And that's the end of these reports.
These reports just get stranger and stranger and stranger. The first one where the portal opens, the Vex come through, and they're truly surprised, which I think is leading more to your idea of these collared Vex are disconnected. Because
Yeah.
if they were connected anyway, that portal would have opened, and the Vex on the other that came through would have known they were standing there. But for the Vex to come through and look surprised would be that would be an indication that they didn't know each other were there. Therefore, one of the two of them are disconnected, and obviously it would be the collared ones.
Yeah.
They start shooting at each other's. The necklace ones were wiped out, and then they ripped the radiolaria and tried to bring it back. Like, I think honestly, it's a good thing that this guy Thunder crashed him, because if they had brought it back, the Vex would have now had something to study.
Right.
And that's dangerous. Because Vex are like the perfect scientists. They're patient, they're analytical, they are purely data driven. Like, for them to have something to study is bad. It's the whole reason we have Maya, an evil Maya.
Kind
Because
of,
they were
yeah.
able to replicate and study her 227 different times. So yeah, so that first one is honestly like the dangerous one. Which, again, if that's one incidence of that happening, that could have happened somewhere else, and somebody might not have thunder crashed them, and now they are studying this stuff. But like, even all this other stuff, like I do love the idea of like Vex building sandcastles in the sand.
Yeah.
Like, that's just fucking cute. I don't care who you are. I would love to just go build Vex sandcastles. I wonder, like, would they be traditional sandcastles, right? Would they have like the little plastic pails and like be building it, or would it be like they built a sandcastle, but instead of like a sandcastle, it just looks like Ishtar Sink, where it's just like the giant tower that's out there above the vault of glass or something like that, or
Yeah.
it just has like it's all just squares and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's an interesting thought. Does the Vex architecture change if they are forming individuality? Would they want to
yeah,
be expressive with their building going forward?
yeah. Do they have progressive thinking architecture?
I mean,
Oh, that's adorable. I don't care who you are. That one entry was just like, okay, these guys aren't as bad as I think they are. Like, I'll play sandcastles with you, yeah. And then the next one makes it even more hilarious, where like the hobgoblin like waves like, hey, and the guy's like, me? Like, who are you waving at? And then waves back, and he's like, oh my god, they waved back! Ah! And starts waving both hands, and then fucking Titan just comes over, boop, pop, bye. And it was like, what the fuck just happened?
yeah. So we are now seeing like all of these seem to denote different levels of emotional response.
Yeah.
Excitement and like excitement and like wanting to make a social connection with a guardian through just like waving to them.
Yeah.
The laughing or like giggling of a Vex climbing a tree is
That one I was half and half on. I couldn't tell if it was happy because it had climbed a tree like a little kid, right?
right. Yeah.
Or if it was like laughing like manically, right? Like an
Could be
evil
either way.
laugh.
Yeah. Could go either way. It could have just gone nuts and
Yeah.
was like scaling a tree. I took it more in the like the joyous, having fun way.
Yeah. Like a little kid climbing a tree.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that point of view, but yeah, that would make sense there too.
Yeah.
Again, having individuality, kind of being a newborn, right?
Right. Now the other thing that these a couple of these entries have pointed out, especially the one with like the Vex stepping out of line, is this like the precursor. They're seeing a mix of the precursors, are those very sleek styled Vex, mixed in with the collared Vex, and they have noted the precursors do not have collars. So what I'm guessing is happening, and because we saw a scene during the episode when you first meet the Conductor where she like dips a bunch of Nessus frame Vex into the radiolaria and then brings them back in precursor forms, and thinking about it, I've never paid attention, but now I'm going to have to. When we experience precursor frames in the game through like the battlegrounds and stuff, if they have collars or not, what I'm wondering is if the precursors are the form that are truly individuals that are now following the Conductor out of a desire to do so, and therefore
Sure.
don't need the collars to like control them anymore.
Well, and that also brings up another question. Are these disconnected Vex able to do what a regular Vex can do? We talked about just now about how like they're experiencing time linearly for the first time. What if they can still access time non-linearly?
Maybe so.
Like that's insanely damaging and really really bad. Like if an individual thinking Vex can now access a past version of itself or the past version of a collective of Vex, what does that mean? Like it has control over its entire lifespan now. Like that's dangerous.
We have some interesting implications with these being precursor frame Vex, because there's two possibilities here. The first possibility is that, like we theorized last episode, this might be the origin point of those frames, of quote unquote
Yeah.
precursor frames. And the reason, for those unaware, that they're called precursors is because technically we ran into those, I think, for the first time in the Vault of Glass, and they were identified as being the oldest frames, despite
Yep.
being very sleek and like nice and shiny and new looking. Like carbon dating, they were the oldest ones.
Right. We got to experience a little bit of them as well during Curse of Osiris, I
Yeah.
think, and possibly Warmind. Definitely Curse of Osiris, because obviously we were blipping in and out of different timelines and
Yep.
stuff
Yep.
Through the Infinite Forest. So yeah.
So if if their origin point originally is Maya creating them, then that tells us that in order for them to still have been able to show up in those other areas, they either get reconnected to the Vex network at some point, like, which is a possibility. We destroy Maya Sundaresh, we destroy the Echo of Control, and they reintegrate into the network sometime in the future. Totally a possibility.
I mean, that has implications.
That has implications for sure. Alternatively, they were still acting as individuals, but had access, maybe had the ability to like turn access on and off to see the timelines, to
Right.
identify that for reasons only they would know, that they should be showing up in those places.
Right. And still have that, again, the same access or abilities
Right.
that a normal Vex has to be able to experience time non-linearly.
Yeah. The other option here is that whether Maya was the origin point of that frame, that type of frame, or not, they may still be disconnected, and the other Vex collective has had time to study and saw efficiencies in that body type, and then started creating them themselves.
Sure. They see something that's like, oh, this is an evolution, this is what we need to go to,
Yeah.
and started creating that.
Yeah.
But but again, for them to be called precursors, they would have started creating it a billion years ago type thing, right? Like for them to be as carbon dating and as old as they are,
Mm-hmm.
they would start doing that. But then because of time, because of linear time, they would then evolve again into themselves. They're like their own paradox.
In a lot of ways. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So it a lot of questions here, but the thing that is kind of definitive, the precursors appear to not need the collars to be controlled. They are supposedly following Maya of their own volition, their own belief in her, or whatever it may be. The collared Vex are being unlocked. I see that as like the collars are unlocking them from the Vex network and allowing
Yep.
them to develop into their own things. And then eventually, based on the cutscene we saw, I think they like find Maya once they have reached a certain point in that development, and then she precursors them.
Yeah.
And the Vex are in that development are starting to experience emotion and like do very humanistic activities. So yeah. Alrighty, so that moves us on to chapter 3, which is the heart truth. And this one goes like this. Mithrax moved carefully through the hangar. The thrum of idling grav drives and hissing pneumatic lifts made his aching head throb. He squinted toward the interface setup at the far end of the docking bay and stopped short. Even amidst the cacophony, Saint's absence was jarring. Mithrax cast his gaze down as a dusty gray pigeon bobbed indignantly across his path and then ducked out of sight behind a rack of engine blocks. Mithrax stooped his head and followed. He pushed aside a drape of loose wiring and found Saint sitting on the edge of one of the docking stations, looking out over the city. Geppetto, Saint's ghost, hovered glumly over her guardian's shoulder. She nodded wordlessly at Mithrax as he approached, and then glided back into the center of the hangar, leaving the two friends alone but for the flock of pigeons that milled aimlessly behind them. "You have not come to visit for a while," Mithrax said. Saint's crested helmet lay on the ground beside the Titan, and Mithrax carefully moved it before sitting next to him. Saint did not break his stare. "You come to check up on me?" he asked flatly. Mithrax considered the question. "Yes," he said. "How are you?" Saint shook his head. "I do not know," he said, words thick with exhaustion. "You do not need to know," Mithrax said. "How do you feel?" "I feel like..." Saint put a hand on his breastplate and then jabbed his fingers into the metal. Then again, harder. Mithrax swallowed the urge to ask him to stop. "I feel like I am not who I thought I was." Mithrax's hands reflexively went to his own chest. "When they found you, Ikora said you moved and spoke as though you were dreaming. I think maybe I have been dreaming for a long time." Saint looked down at his balled fists and then loosened his grip and laced his fingers together in his lap. "The conductor woke me," he whispered. Mithrax heard the darkness in his friend's voice. "And what did it say to you?" he asked, keeping his own voice warm. "The truth," Saint said gravely. Mithrax sat patiently in silence. "It told me I am a lie," Saint said finally. "A copy. It said I am something left over from another reality. A twisted reflection from inside the Vex network. Osiris and the Guardian pulled me into this world, but I do not belong here." "Where are we?" Mithrax asked. Saint groaned and waved the question away. "Do not say something smart to me now. Osiris does this, and I have had enough of it." Again, Mithrax sat patiently. "We are in the tower," Saint muttered. Mithrax nodded. "We are," he said, stressing the first word. Saint looked over at the Elixni and then closed his eyes in acknowledgement. Yes. Smart like Osiris. I say I do not belong, and I see where this is going." Mithrax drew himself to his feet. A pile of brightly colored canvas bags on a nearby pallet caught his attention, and he walked slowly to them. "So what am I going to say?" he called over his shoulder. Saint sighed and leaned back on his hands. "You would say that you, Mithrax, proud Elixni of House Light, are here in the last city, stronghold of your enemies, and that if anyone does not belong, it is you. Mithrax smiled to himself and tore the corner of one of the canvas bags. Golden seed spilled from within. And yet, Saint continued, you walk freely. You have many friendships. You talk with the great monster Saint 14. You feed his birds. Mithrax smiled, and the pigeons gathered behind Saint's back as he scattered a loose handful of seed. Suddenly, his vision narrowed and darkened. His headache shrieked, filling his mind with blinding pain. He doubled over as a terrifying urge. Rule. Kel. Roared through his chest. The pigeons burst away in harried flight, leaving the seed untouched on the ground. Saint was still watching the pigeons wheel through the sky and down into the city. Mithrax wrapped his arms around himself until the shaking subsided and took a deep draw of ether. You are a good friend, Saint said, his gaze fixed on the city. Mithrax walked over slowly and sat down next to him. I try, he said softly. And that's the end of this chapter.
So, dude, that last little bit kind of fucked me up. We'll get to that. So this is just after I think the end of Act 1, I think.
Yeah, like we've just rescued Saint from
the Conductor.
The Conductor.
Yep. So obviously Saint's struggling with this idea of like, he's not real. He's from a different timeline. Like he shouldn't exist here. Like, it's hard. It's really hard on him. Like it's really, really weighing him down. So yeah, I like Mithrax's approach here of like, not like how are you? Like it doesn't, you don't need to know how you are. Like how do you feel right now? Just talk in this moment. See if any of that helps anything. And then of course Saint doesn't want to. He's like, look, Osiris does this shit to me all day long. I don't feel like dealing with it here. Like I just leave me be. Let me feed my birds and just sit here and think. I don't want to play this stupid mind game. And Mithrax is like really patient. Like I to think of like where Mithrax has come to now, I think Mithrax has always been patient, but I think even more recently he's becoming more and more patient of like sit and think and contemplate and really think out like what the next action should be. So he just kind of lets Saint kind of just talk. And then I like what he asked here towards the end where he's like, where are we? And Saint kind of, shrugs it off and then finally comes back with, we're in the tower. And Saint goes, yes, we are. And then, Saint kind of like sees through it and he's like, God damn it. Like, you got me to play this game without me willing to play this game with you of being smart, whatever. And Mithrax just kind of lets it go. Like, he just kind of lets him think it through, talk it through to himself. And then towards the end here, this is where it got weird. So, Mithrax tears open the thing, gives some bird seed to Saint. And, Mithrax is enjoying this moment. And then his vision narrowed and darkened. His headache shrieked, filling his mind with blinding pain. He doubled over as a terrifying urge, rule, Kel, roared through his chest. What the fuck? Did the Echo of Control reach out to Mithrax?
I don't think that this is the Echo of Control. I think this is perhaps a teaser for episode Revenant.
Oh, shit. Oh, this is like a foreshadowing. Like maybe he's losing his grip. Like he's become this calm, patient, collective thing, and he's losing his grip on it. Oh, 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 okay. Okay.
So, because
Okay.
to key in on that for just a moment here, because we know Echo Revenant, based on like the key art surrounding it, is very much Scorn based.
Yep.
And it's likely based on like some of the dialogue from Crow and just kind of common sense with how the story has progressed, that Fickrell, the fanatic, is probably going to be the central baddie
Yep.
of Revenant.
I think it's
And
even been like even in the Revenant cutscenes and stuff, like it's even says like Fickroll and stuff like that.
yeah, now it would make sense that Crow would probably be an invested character for Revenant. It would also make sense that Mithrax would be invested in, putting a stop to the corruption of Dark Ether and all that stuff.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and we don't necessarily know what the echo that will be present in that episode is. Like, I don't think they've told us like if it's the echo of power or the echo of whatever. Um,
The echo of shiny things.
yeah. Uh,
That's what I want.
but whatever that echo is, I wonder if it's able to either. I don't. I hesitate to say like brainwash because that feels more like the echo of control. But I wonder
Right.
if it brings out the darker urges.
That's what I'm curious of. I'm curious if it's like so again, thinking on that idea of like brainwashing, like the Vex that are under the echo of control aren't necessarily being brainwashed.
That's true.
They kind of are. Like the word control makes it seem to just on a surface level that this is a brainwashing thing. But when we look at the Vex from an outside point of view, it's giving them individuality. So it, it's hard to not call the echo of control brainwashing because I mean anytime you change someone's way of thinking, an individual's way of thinking, that is brainwashing. So like yeah, I can see where that's coming at. But then like here, like again, maybe it's like an unlocking, right? Like kind of what you're thinking of, like looking into like the past of like this is something that like the leader of a house is traditionally rules with kind of an iron fist.
Right.
They are like the Kell is everything. They're not just a ruler. They're also like head of household. Like they are everything. Like anything that happens in an individual house through the past has always gone through the Kell, and they are the final say in everything. And Mithrax has taken a less traditional role to that. He's kind of like opened it up. He's kind of like let the light flow through. The light provides, right? Like that's kind of his thing. And so like he doesn't really rule in the traditional Kell sense. Yes, he is a leader, but he's not ruling. He's not like, I demand that any bounty comes through me and I will decide who gets their pick of what, like
Yeah.
type thing. Like so yeah, it's interesting that it this new echo might be tugging at him and possibly like unlocking or like I can't I don't know how to word it. Like unlocking just seems like the right word. But unlocking like his darker urges of like his past self of like, oh, I am a Kell, I'm supposed to rule. Or is this just like something's happening to him?
Right.
Like is this completely not connected? But I do like that idea of foreshadowing.
Right. And if we are to assume that whatever this is coming from an echo that is in the hands of Fickrell,
Yeah.
the question might be like, okay, well, why is it affecting Mithrax in such a way?
Right.
Like, I don't think Fickrell would be doing anything intentionally to Mithrax specifically. Might be wrong. But the question might be like, how is there a connection there? And
That was what I was about to ask. Is
yeah,
is there or has there ever been a connection between Mithrax and Fickrell other than they're both Elixni?
I don't believe between those two. However, there is a potential connection between the Echo and Mithrax. A,
Oh.
we don't, the Echoes are the memories of previously conquered species, which would
Sure.
include Elixni from the Whirlwind.
Oh yeah.
So there could be a connection there. Or if the Echoes just is memories from something else, but is innately dark, and it happens to be in the
Sure.
hands of a dark, once
Yeah.
Elixni. We know
Yeah.
that Mithrax was gallivanting around with pieces of Nezarec for quite some time in his youth. And that
Right.
that could have tainted him in some way that makes him susceptible to this.
Oh my God. Dude, okay. Yeah, I like it. I like it. That's staying.
So
That is what's happening.
yeah.
Predicted here by Mythborn, as usual.
I do think it's definitely foreshadowing that there's some, and I mean, even at the beginning of this entry, like Mithrax was complaining of a headache,
Yep.
I and it seems like maybe something that has slowly been growing or that he's been combating for a while now. It doesn't seem like he's surprised by this. He's just
Yeah.
managing it. So I think maybe ever since the Echoes launched, he's been slowly like fighting off these episodes of whatever is happening to him.
Yep. I mean, I'm curious too, since it does seem like Fickrell might be in command of this next Echo. Is Fickrell looking out as like, because again, is he a Kel?
They don't really use
Kind
this
of.
the standard term, like the standard hierarchy.
Sure.
I think Fickrell's probably closer to an archon than anything. He's like a religious fanatic
Right.
around,
Right.
Scorn and Dark Ether and all that.
Right. So I'm curious if, again, Dark Ether has been it is dark. It is enhanced with darkness. Um, so I'm curious if the Echo there is playing into that, and if the Echo, again, like like we're talking about, how like they are part of the past of the Witness and things that it has conquered. If this is like this is the Echo that is part of the conquering of original Reese, and now it's in the hands of Fickrell,
Mm-hmm.
and now Fickrell can be like, oh, I'm going to use this to my advantage, and I'm going to start pushing out whatever, pushing out power, pushing out forces, whatever it is he's going to do, he's going to do. But yeah, I foreshadowing for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I think this is definitely them poking at like stuff to come. So, yeah. Uh next one here is very descriptive in its title. It is chapter 4, Sun 12/personal. Which leads me to believe.
I'm telling you, I ever since the beginning, I've always thought that this Maya Sundaresh in front of us is Sun 12. There's all these little like tiny hints here and there that are like keep pushing at it, keep pushing at it, keep pushing at it. But again, nothing definitive.
Well, I think you've got some evidence in this
Yay!
entry here. So
Yay!
this is a number of personal logs of like journal entries, for lack of a better term, of Maya Sundaresh as she is finding her own individuality within the Vex network in the wake of the Echo kind of hitting the network. And so the first log is log number 3, and it says, I am still among the Vex. My third day of reawakening has been the cruelest so far. I have generated a log to sort through my thoughts. This is just too much to take all at once. My ability to focus is strained with a shrill and immediate grief. My heart lived in my beloved's hands. How am I supposed to comprehend that this isn't just absence, but death? There will be evidence, histories these meticulous machines would have catalogued. I will find evidence that I was am missed. I know what I must do. The primary query continues. So I might pause after each of these, but this one worth pointing out that Maya is like awoken, has come to her to find herself, her own thought patterns and like personality within the Vex network. Because as they showed in the cutscene and during like the Veil containment logs, Maya and Chioma both sacrificed themselves to the Vex network. Maya going first, and then Chioma kind of like life, not lifelessly. It was almost in a way of taking her own life. She proceeded after
Yeah.
her.
Yep.
But Maya has now like unintegrated from the Vex network.
That's the weird part, right? Like that shouldn't happen.
Right. And so something about the Echo of Control offers the ability to like control yourself, like to be disconnected and find a individuality within the noise that is the Vex network. And as she is coming to her senses and is has the entirety of the network at her fingertips, is still being a part of it, she can pull on information that the Vex have access to, and is trying to find, knows that Chioma is gone, and is trying to find evidence that like shows that Maya, essentially she's trying to validate herself. She's trying to validate her
Yep.
previous decisions, that like I did the right thing. People miss me. People loved me or do love me for what I did, that kind of thing.
Well, and the fact that she's doing queries here, I'm reminded of the queries inside the protocol.
Yeah.
The 6 confluxes. So that again, I'm starting to think more and more that those queries there are MSUN 12.
Yeah, I believe so. And so the next log here, log number 8, goes on to say, after 2 days of requesting authorization, the Vex finally granted me access to their historical records of Earth. I read a term for an era I never knew, the collapse. And indeed, they did. Technological capabilities impacted. Hostile combatants occupying the majority of the planet for far too long. Invention and experimentation, not related to paracausal power sources, halted for centuries. It seems humanity was huddled together like wet kittens, the cramped and stifled survivors of monumental destruction. I read the records as if they were about some other civilization's primitive past rather than my own. The Vex documented it all, collected all they could smother their milk with. One human wrote about the day they stood on the edge of an abandoned dam and watched a swarm of small machines spew from an unseen seam in the Traveler. Now, how Nezarec ships turned day into midnight. How the years that followed hastened humanity's extinction. Countries that turned to anarchy, then to feudalism. The art and technology we bled and wept to champion abandoned as power grids failed and disasters swelled. Humanity could have kept experimenting and learning. But when Earth died, so too what made them human. They forgot everything we were. So, pausing again here, the surreal experience of a scientist
Yeah.
seeing the utter decline, not only of their species, but of science and like the pursuit of knowledge in general.
Yeah. It all came down to survival, right? When
Yeah.
the collapse happened, nothing else mattered. Like live became the primary objective of every single human everywhere. And so like yeah, it's interesting here, like she sees the birth of Ghost. Some human stood on the edge of an abandoned dam and watched a swarm of small machines spew from some unseen seam in the Traveler. That's all the Ghost being born.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nezarec ships turning day into midnight. Like So clearly he was in the system and doing shit
Yep.
during the collapse. Like we obviously we know this. We knew he was here. We knew that Sabathun, kind of trapped him here type thing, or it killed him, right? Outright killed him.
Yep. Killed him and.
Like took the veil, killed him,
Hmm.
and blipped out. So yeah, like the collapse really did. It was just that. It was a collapse of everything. So yeah, the fact that there are even humans that exist in today in Destiny current is kind of a miracle.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And it's interesting because near the end, she's almost accusatory.
Yeah.
Humanity could have kept experimenting and learning, but when Earth died, so too what made them human. They forgot everything we were,
Yep.
and it's almost she's like laying blame at humanity for not continuing science and exploration
Right.
as a main tenet. Uh,
Well, and we know now that she's searching for her golden age. She's
right,
searching to make that a thing again, and we're seeing that happening. We're seeing the beginning thoughts of that happen in that passage of like, okay, well maybe if I can get this back to the golden age, then we'll truly like that's the correct timeline. Like we shouldn't be in this corrupted, declined collapse of humanity. The golden age should have kept going.
yeah. Which there are some really interesting parallels here, and this like decline of science and this reliance on just like survivability. Um, and if you really want to dig deep, you could also say some like religious context around the worship of the traveler at the time. Uh, but there's a lot of similarities that can be drawn to the Dark Ages, like
Yeah,
of our history.
100%. Dark
I've
Ages last for what 1,200 years.
Yeah, is around there. It's like 1,000 years.
Yeah,
Uh, but there was a time period between the 5th and 14th century where like science was all but outlawed in a lot of
yeah,
ways.
yep,
Um, and there's a lot of historians that I've read that point towards our current technology level being uh, further behind than it should be for the kind of lifespan of our species,
yeah,
and they point at that 1,000 years of science not existing as being the
yeah.
reason we are as far behind as we are, which is a weird thing to say, I know, but like
Well, even simple things like the model of our solar system
yeah,
was first thought up in Egypt in like 3,000 BC or something like that. Like, I mean, the idea of our solar system is ancient, and then like you said, like for science to be outlawed, like when Galileo started coming up with the idea of like, hey, um, I don't think the Earth is the center of the universe. That was radical. That was like that's heresy. Like you're getting burned to death at the stake for that. Like that's you just didn't do that. So again, any type of thinking, any type of forward thinking that involved science or anything around scientific thought being outlawed, yeah, I can absolutely see why, you know, we as a species are we're kind of not where we should possibly be. Which again is says like what you're saying. That's what Maya's seeing here with the collapse happening.
right, like that's the feeling that I think she is probably getting, is like she's seeing another dark age,
Yeah,
and one that she feels she might have the ability via the Vex to like
correct.
prevent. Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. In
I
her
mean,
mind, correct.
right. And imagine though, like in the last 40-50 years, we went from computers that take up entire rooms of buildings to having a supercomputer in your pocket via a phone.
Yeah,
Like that was not a long time ago. Like it
that is
made.
not long. That is a short amount of time.
Now imagine that happened 900 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, where would we be
like
now?
like like the computers that sent us to the moon back in the 60s literally took up an entire like warehouse building. That same computer is that fits in your pocket. That cell phone is thousands times more powerful than that original IBM. So yeah, like it's to think that that happened over the last 60, 70 years. You know, if you could expand that over, like what you're saying, like over another 1,000 years, you know, the fun thought experiment is always like, oh, we're gonna have cell phones in our fingertips, you know, or I'm gonna have a phone in my tooth, and then that's it, and I'm plugged into the Matrix type thing. Like, yeah, that could honestly be a possibility. Like the further that science advances, the better and more efficient it can become. And so yeah, it's just it's an interesting thought experiment there to think of like where we as humanity now, real humanity, could be if that 1,000 years of scientific advancement had not been stunted. And then again, in here in Destiny, Maya's like, well, if I've got the power to do that, I am going to do that. I'm going to make it to where that 1,000 years of advancement did happen.
Which on one hand is like, oh, the world that we could potentially live in would be so incredibly different, and hopefully better.
Yeah,
But at the same time, the thing that Maya is not accounting for is like, yes, that that world could exist, but the cost to make it happen is everybody that exists now,
yeah,
because they're all a result of the history they experienced.
right, exactly. There's also paracausality, right? Like
Right.
paracausality exists in this universe, in the Destiny universe. It Without paracausality, we don't defeat the witness. The witness wins. Like, cool, you kept humanity going, you kept the climate, you kept scientific advancement going. Paracausality doesn't care about science. Paracausality is like the antithesis of science. You
Yeah.
know, like there's no cause or effect of anything. So if something paracausal does come to the system, and to think like our golden age happened because of paracausality. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
the traveler showed up and helped our our species advance. And so to just completely ignore that is, I don't know. I think that's a little hubris
Yes.
on Maya's part, and she needs to maybe like think bigger picture. But I again, at this point, it seems like she's very much obsessed
Yeah.
with this idea
Yeah.
of bringing the golden age back.
And we see her make some justifications and some arguments for how we know she will eventually proceed in the next entry here. So this is entry number 28, where she says, past events mean little to a threat so preoccupied with iterating on the future. While Vex do not share my interest in history, they have tracked this timeline all the same. There are trillions of alternate versions, of course, and it seems these Vex diligently dispose of those potentialities once a present moment slides chronologically into the past. I've thrown myself into these records. The primary query is in full force. It seems humans have retained none of their virtues or diligence, only resilience through violence. Their numbers have radically reduced, only enough to fill a single city. They suffer a supplication of scientific rigor. What inventions have they made? What diseases have they cured? Who is better here? Most disappointingly, humans seem to have forgotten the entirety of their history, and instead of something sensible, went and established a junta, which, for reference, is a political structure led by military leaders, aka the Vanguard. But Earth is a near total loss. Advanced cities have been replaced over centuries by encroaching overgrowth of native species and the ruin of time. The climate's balance was erased by warlords. Universal democracy has collapsed into military rule, again for emphasis, instead of trying to recreate the forms of governance they knew existed. They concluded that voting is for the elitist briggarts and empowered a junta. The more I see the mistakes humanity made, the more obvious the solutions are. It is clear that during the collapse, they had nothing but terror, empty of anything other than sheer survival. But how insulting it feels to look at what became of the future and only see frightened and frothing dogs. There are lessons to be learned in their methods, but the results is inelegant and crude. If these people are to see the future, they must look backwards to what they lost. I now have the means to aid them in this. So, a lot of what we already said. This like
she's nuts.
justification of, this idea that looking at the remnants of a species that had a extinction level event, that survived an extinction level event, and to be like disappointed at
Yeah.
how they survived it. Like,
come on,
okay.
lady.
Sure, I'm sure you would have done
Yeah.
so much better in that position.
Hindsight's 20/20 type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's nuts though. Like this whole like I get where she's coming from. Like I do. I understand that idea. Like, and the thing that kind of drove it home for me was like, instead of trying to recreate forms of governance they knew existed, because that's the thing. Like, humanity survived the collapse,
Right.
so therefore some of that knowledge had to have been passed on during that survival, during the collapse. Again, we don't know the exact amount of time that the collapse existed, like how long it took from like, pyramid ship showed up to, oh my god, there's guardians now. Like, we don't know what that amount of time looks like. We know, I mean, even people like Pt.1 were part of that, like lived through that and are still exist today. So yeah, it's interesting that that once a level of like, I don't want to say like a level of calm, but like once the collapse was kind of over. Now again, the big glaring thing that we're not that Maya is ignoring here is paracausality and the releasing of ghosts and the creation of guardians.
Yeah.
Like that alone is enough to make, like, again, the original Risen were terrifying. These were beings with insane power and didn't know what to do with it other than wield it. And so that's why we had another set of Dark Ages. And that's why we had to get people with like the Iron Lords. We had, that's why we had warlords. Like, that's all of that existed again because a collapse happened and a power was given, and some people took that power and it went to their heads. So,
well, and the other thing that she may not be aware of, because I don't know that the Vex are aware of or care, is that the raised guardians have no memories. So that's a very large swath of people, the people most equipped to survive the longest, that don't have a history to pull from.
I didn't even think of that. I did not even think of that. So yeah, so that's really the glaring issue that again, and this kind of ticks me off to think of Maya as such a scientific mind, and then for her to completely ignore the glaring thing in her face of like guardians, paracausality, ghosts. That plays a huge role in the advancements of humanity, or even the survival of humanity through the collapse and into the current time. So yeah, it's yeah, Maya's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
That's all there is to it.
So now there is a glaring question to be asked here. So that's the end of her logs.
Oh, she got one more.
Oh, you're right. I needed to scroll a little further down. Okay.
These entries are long.
They are.
This lore book has got some long entries.
Okay, so this is a shorter one, but then there's a question I want to address. But this is log 32, and this one says, I have tamed the untamable. With practice and soon with mastery, with a single phrase, I can divert the Vex's sea of iteration and death. Think of the utility. We could retake home, dissolve the walls of the last city, and let each person decide what home means to them. With targeted hostility, we may clear a path for peace, revive the machines of science and learning once again. Someday, with technology redistributed from Vex to humanity, every need can be met with any simulation. All it will take is an alignment of interests through measured coercion. It's so simple. And yet all that must wait. Primary query must be concluded. It is the only one outstanding variable. There have been too many false positives. None of them are correct. None. The query is only turning back facsimiles, trick mirrors. I know I'm right, and I will not stop until the primary query stops pulling from false databases. I can think of little else. We must look backward. We must look backward. I must look backward. I must. I must. And that's the end.
Oh my god, dude, she's fucking lost it.
And this
Like,
this primary query,
I'm sorry, measured coercion,
yeah, like
targeted hostilities. Hold the fuck on here.
Wait
I'm
a
not
minute.
gonna say it, but 1935 through 1945 Germany would like to have a word with you, Maya.
Yeah.
Just saying,
Yeah.
these are bad things. This is not a good thing.
No, it is not. And this primary query that she keeps talking about that keeps spitting out false positives, trick mirrors, facsimiles. This is the query of finding her perfect Chioma.
Yep, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But no, so and we know how all that goes because you either played the season or played the episode or listened to our last episode.
And it turns out it was bad.
It doesn't go well.
It was
spoilers,
dark, and it was bad.
Yeah. But no, the thing that I want to touch on here. So we know that the Ishtar Collective as a whole, all the Mayas, all the Chiomas, all the Dr. Shims, all the, I forget the other people.
We're so bad.
I know. I know.
We're terrible people. I think one of them might be Dave.
Yeah, who knows? But there are 227 versions of them that entered the Vex network. And I have always been of the belief that M Sund 12 is Maya Sundaresh version 12.
Yep.
Because that makes sense.
I'm totally in agreement.
M Sund 12 is the one that is writing all of these logs.
Yep.
M Sund 12 was the one that prevented the Cabal from getting access to like the Oxa machine via the Vex network, which leads us to believe that M Sund 12 is either in a scarily close simulation to our universe or is the Maya that was in our universe that experimented on the Veil.
Yeah.
So,
which then means is our universe the 12th universe? Are we in a Vex simulation right now?
Well, that is a question to be asked.
Which is scary because then that means the Vex can simulate paracausality because we're fucking using it.
Now, we have seen instances where Mayas have exited the Vex network, though. Like there was the Maya Sundaresh that worked with Clovis that then carved him up.
That was completely in his mind. Like she didn't. She was. If you go back and listen to our Clovis series, that was one thing that like every time he talks about working with a Maya Sundaresh in there, she was not real. She didn't exist. There was no records of her ever working with him on Europa. Like she left when he did his whole thing at the Spire Tower on Mars and sectioned off that AI. Maya got pissed and was like, "I'm never working with you again. Go fuck yourself," and went on to be with the Ishtar Collective. So the fact that he was convinced that he had gotten her to join his team, and then when the crazy scene where he's all, networked. All of his veins and the nervous system is all networked out, laying sprawled out on the table, and he like wakes up to it, and he's like, "Oh God, what's happening?"
Yeah.
That evil Maya literally only existed in his mind.
But was able, yes, but she also like took on a physical form of some sort because she was physically cutting into him, and
Oh, that's right.
Elsie showed up and like shot her to death.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
there's some kind of pseudo physicality there. And it makes me wonder if a similar situation, though I would need to go back. I don't remember it being explained how that physical form existed.
For
Um
some reason, I remember it being just like a red eye and whatnot. Like I think it was like radiolaria that had like
Maybe it
taken control
was.
of parts of the machinery in there.
That could be. That could be, now that you
Which
say that.
again, if she exists in the Vex network, that's a logical thing. Like
Yeah.
the Vex network and radiolaria are the same thing.
Which brings about the question of, if this was M-Sun 12, if she was the one that Chioma was writing all her logs about, was she in Chioma's head? Like,
Oh
did
shit!
we have did we have Chioma 1 in our universe Prime? The original Maya never came back from Clovis Bray, or something happened to her and she was replaced with M-Sun
With M-Sun
12
12.
in Chioma's head, and then went on
Oh
to do all
god.
those terrible things at Neomuna. And
I mean, we know like there's some entries. I can't remember where it is. It might be on one of the lore tabs we're gonna read next time, or something where
mhm,
like Maya like whispers to herself or something
yeah.
in the middle of experimenting on the arc, on the cloud arc and the veil.
Yeah, she's
But
like
yeah,
muttering to herself. I don't remember the details, but yeah,
but you
the
you know you remember what I'm
I,
talking about.
I
There's
remember
some
what you're talking
entry
about.
there.
Yeah. The other thing is that would maybe offer some explanation as to why Lakshmi was made. If
Oh
M-Sun
sure.
12 was purely like, wasn't corporeal and needed a physical body to control, to
Oh
do
shit.
things, then that could be why Lakshmi was made in the first place. And then now she also had access to physically manipulate stuff within, within the world of Neomuna. I
Dude, I I I like it.
Now I'm sure there are a lot of holes in that theory. Like, this is very spinfoil just off the top of my head. I do not have supporting evidence. I do not have like lore entries here, and here point to this, or disprove it or anything. But
I like it though.
we theorized even back with the veil containment stuff that wasn't the real Maya, because
Yeah.
its personality wise didn't mesh with what we had seen some of her ideals and characteristics were in previous entries.
Right. Like the whole idea that like Maya is a scientist, but she's not a Clovis Bray level scientist of like,
Right.
I'm going to do anything to get the answers that I want. Whereas in like Veiled Containment, we were seeing that happening. We were seeing her like she's discarding bodies like they're nothing. And like she's like, oh, another 5 exos. Sucks to suck. Grab
Yeah.
5 more.
Yeah.
And Chioma's like, this is wrong.
Yeah. And if anything, there's lore entry where Maya was a part of a experiment, like a group that was working on something, I think with Clovis, or maybe it was something with Ishtar, that was had a body count. Like it was affecting people to the point where there were deaths of the people they were studying, and that's what caused her to tender her resignation. Was like, I'm not a butcher. I don't want to be here doing this. I want to go home.
Yep.
So like, trying to rationalize that person, then being like, oh, there's another 10 people, let's figure out what killed them and try again, like that,
Yeah.
those don't mesh.
Right. Right.
So yeah, again, all spin foil, but I think the fact that this log, the conductor's log, is titled M-Sun 12, I think that's a hint that this isn't Maya Prime per se.
Yep.
Uh, but we're going to go through one more for this episode. And this one is a fun one. It is chapter 5, and it is As a Stranger, Give It Welcome. And I think you're going to like the end of this especially.
Oh, snap.
So this one goes like this. The Vex network, a thrumming constellation of infinite parentheticals with no arbitrary lines between the simulated and the non-simulated. Limitless planes of cause and effect and effect and effect pressed together until they reach forever. A formless catalog of all possible forms, constantly reinventing, refining, and redefining the very concept of everything. And then something changed. A single pinpoint of swirling light fell unceremoniously into the network. Like a leaf onto the surface of a pond, gentle ripples flowed outward through the surrounding data. The denizens of the network, lacking any framework and parameters beyond what they could predict, were unable to perceive what had pierced their reality. They did not acknowledge the foreign presence. They were unable to see it or feel it, and were incapable of hearing anything when the light began to call. It was a wordless cry of encouragement, powerful confidence, a promise so hopeful that it ran through the contradictory miasma of the network like the blast of a bugle. Reveille bugle. It was an offer and a challenge, an echo of something from long ago. Locked away in the network were some who could still hear song, who could still be moved, who still somehow held a shred of themselves. The ones who were kept, the ones who remained, the ones who were hidden. They heard, and they began to reach upward. A fractal cluster of nested realities unfurled like a frond. 220 odd instances of consciousnesses reaching in unison. A controlled frenzy of cooperation as the minds within piled Ishtar branded office furniture to the skies and lifted one another to be closer. Ones and zeros stacked perilously, finding swaying purchase with their sensible flats on each other's thin shoulders. An inescapable trace of a signal, sneered at the sincerity of the call, but still willed itself to move, reaching up two thin spindles of data in a way that felt somehow familiar. The great quiet thing, the knot worm, kept its eyes closed and ignored the call. It was still too soon, it decided. It shivered, the motion forming cascading bubbles of new hypothetical simulations in which it did not shiver. These contradictions soured and burst, scattering nutrients into the network. A man in tattered robes, feathers long since worn from his headdress, streaked through the shifting plasmic haze on golden wings, urged on by the tiny starburst at his side. His eyes were a furious flame. More reached and more still, warping the matrix of the network around the incursion point until the bounds of their simulations formed tentative spikes of frantic ferrofluid. As they stretched, they became defined, clarified, like figures stepping into the light. And as they neared the shimmering point, a rush of their voices could be heard. We need to warn them. There's still a chance. Saint, hold on to me. I am owed this. Hurry, get Shim. There isn't enough of me left. Tell Elsie, prateth still. Please, please wait. Warn them. I have to warn them. They reached a spiraling halo of desperate fingertips. But only one of them would be first. And that's the end of that chapter.
Oh, shit. Holy shit. I was I was a little confused at first, but then like it started to fall into place about halfway through. Holy fucking shit! Holy shit! um. Okay, I'm gonna take a stab at this because I think I know what's going on here.
Okay.
Um. So this is the Vex network,
Yup.
but I'm pretty sure it's okay. I'm gonna start backwards and work my way forwards. How about
Okay.
that? This is Osiris. A man in tattered robes, feathers long since worn from his headdress, streaking through the shifting plasmic haze on golden wings, urged on by the tiny starburst at his side, being Sagira, his eyes were furious flame. This is one of his echoes.
Yes.
Is either one of his echoes or himself. I'm leaning towards echo. The things that are reaching out to him, we need to warn them. There's still a chance. There isn't enough of me. Or sorry, we need to warn them. There's still a chance. Please, please wait. Warn them. I have to warn them. Those I'm thinking are individual versions of the 227.
Yes.
Then there's the Saint. I am owed this. I think those two might be um, Osiris or version. Something in there is connected to Osiris looking for Saint.
I'm
Uh,
guessing so, yeah.
the other three, Hurry Get Shim. Who the fuck is Shim? Is Shim one of the five?
Dr. Shim is one of the 5
Okay,
Ishtar.
so clearly trying to get one of them. There isn't enough of me left. Tell Elsie, prateth still. That one fucked me up. What? Okay. What? Fuck. Words. Form. Uh, what is Elsie's and Praetus connection? Did
uh
Elsie send the signal, or did Praetus get a signal to Elsie? Like what? I can't remember the exact course of events. I know we covered it, but I can't remember the exact course of events because I know there's a scene where like Pradith is like working on bits of a radio, and there's literally 227 copies of Maya Sundaresh and her team like helping him, but they're all like disconnected from our reality because the gates are closed, type thing. Like they don't exist essentially while they're in that state. But then something happens to get a signal out, which is I think us interfering with the Vault of Glass, and then Praedyth getting like seeing that and like boosting his signal off of it.
Now, the only concrete connection we know between Pradith and Elsie, as far as I'm aware, is that they use the same rifle.
Okay. Okay.
I
Okay. So it could be that he found a version of her rifle in cuz yeah, it could be that he found a version of her rifle within the Vex network and that's what he was using, or vice versa. Like that could be the rifle that was pulled from the Vex network, then given to Elsie, and then she turned it into the Stranger's rifle, and then turned it into. Because I think yes, because that's where you got the original version of it in D1 was the heroic mission where you went into the starting area of Vault of Glass and and started the mission to God, we gotta go play some D1, man. There's some great, fantastic things that the secrets in D1 that I never really got to truly experience. But you had to wait for the day that mission where I think it was the mission Paradox. You had to wait for it to be the heroic version of it for the daily mission, and then when you went in, there was an alternate path that you could take that would then lead to um, her rifle, the exotic version of her rifle in D1. Um,
yeah. I
and I think that connection there was we got that signal from Pradith or vice versa, like us going into that because the area you're in is essentially where the Templar fight happens in Vault of Glass, and that's like the area that you go through for the mission.
mhm.
Um, and so I think that's the connection there. I think it's just the rifle. So like the fact that the two of them might know each other through this rifle is a super fucking cool. Um, but B, like the Praetus still lives. Like
Yeah.
I the big thing is I don't have a we don't have a time of when this is happening. right? If this is an Osiris using, obviously, if Sagira is still alive, this had to have been these events. I'm assuming are taking place sometime during Curse of Osiris.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Nope. So my interpretation of this is this point of light that causes ripples across the network. This is the echo entering the network.
Oh shit.
And the Vex can't hear it. They can't
calculate
see it. It's paracausal.
Yeah, it's a null point for them.
Right. It's nothing to them, but everything that isn't a Vex that is still holding on to a piece of itself within the Vex network can hear the call of this item and innately seems to understand that grabbing hold of it is going to allow them to become corporeal in some way, or like allow them to escape.
Shit.
And what I see this as is, okay, you have this glass surface pond of, all the water is Vex, and the fish that are in the pond are the various people that are in the Vex network that are still themselves in some way. And someone has just dropped a single piece of food on the top. And it is all of them scrambling to try and be the first one to get up there and grab it because it's going to get them out.
Oh my God. I didn't even think of it from that point of view. Like with this entry being here, it would have to be connected to the echo. Oh my God.
So if we take that thought and we break down the different things being described here.
Sure.
In irascible trace of a signal sneered at the sincerity of the call, but willed itself to move. Reaching up two thin spindles of data in a way that felt somehow familiar. If I were to make a guess as to who that would be,
dude.
Because irascible means having a tendency to be easily angered or irritated, makes me think that this is some sliver of Asher Mir.
Oh my God. Wouldn't that be tits? That'd be fucking awesome.
Because wouldn't that be him be like, look at all these silly people trying to escape this.
They don't even know how their data arms work. They're so stupid.
Yeah. That feels like him.
Dude. If that shit. Okay. All right. Episode done. We're going home now. Bye. No. Holy shit. Dude, that'd be awesome.
So I think one of these, potentially Asher.
I am owed this, maybe?
That maybe? I don't know. Or maybe there isn't enough of me left.
There isn't enough of me left?
Yeah.
One of those two. One of those two. There's still a chance. Like, one of those, I think, are like, that's got to be okay. I'm seeing Asher now. Now that's all I'm seeing in all of this. The other one I wanted to ask about, the great. Okay, so the Tattered Robe one's. That's got to be an echo of Osiris.
I think that's an echo of Osiris. And if I recall,
why is that there?
If I recall from our episode about Satan Osiris, when Osiris was doing his make copies of himself to go explore the infinite forest in his search for Saint, if I recall correctly, there was a copy that never came back and has just been in the infinite forest ever since.
Wandering the network.
So I'm guessing that this is perhaps that copy, and the little sunburst with it is, I don't know if his copies also made copies of Segura in some way, or I'm not 100% sure there.
The tiny sunburst at his side just I feel like that's describing a ghost.
I feel like it is too. I don't know exactly the mechanics of how that ghost would exist, but
sure.
I distinctly remember
it's just a facsimile of the real thing.
Sure. May not have actual paracausality.
Right.
But yeah,
but may not have actual paracausality, but like what Cade was saying, like it is made of paracausality because his echoes are his use of paracausality to create them. You know what I mean?
Right. Correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess there's a couple different like they could explain that in a few ways, I guess. And we'll,
Sure.
I don't know if
What is
we'll
what
get
is
more
what
info.
is the great quiet thing, the knotworm? Is that the traveler?
So, well, the traveler wouldn't necessarily be immersed in the Vex network.
Right.
So I don't think that would be them. Uh I don't know that I was looking around. I haven't seen these titles attached to anything in
Because that's the thing.
particular.
They're all capitalized. The great quiet thing is capitalized, comma, the knotworm. Knotworm is hyphenated capitalized.
Yeah, I see
Which,
those as is titles referring to like the same entity, you know.
yeah.
Um
So not worm, so not darkness, not a one of the great worms that tempted and successfully tempted the sisters in Fundament. The great quiet thing, the only thing that's been quiet is the traveler. Like I feel like this is
Now,
describing the traveler.
I don't think it's describing the traveler cuz like the great quiet thing can you could attach that to a bunch of different things.
Sure, sure,
And the fact it has to be called the knot worm tells me it's similar enough to a worm that a distinction needs to be made.
sure.
Like why would you call the traveler a knot worm? It's like, well, duh. Like
Right, duh. Yeah. No, I'm
so
following.
the things that are closest to a worm that we know of are the proto worms, you know, what they were before they were corrupted, what Asa
Like
is,
Asa. Yeah.
or the Ahamkara.
Oh shit.
So
It shivered the motion, forming cascading bubbles of new hypothetical simulations, which it did not, in which it did not shiver. These contradictions soured and burst, scattering nutrients. Maybe,
so
maybe.
the and again, this is something that's in the Vex network. So if there is a time, I don't know that we have any information to point to like a proto worm finding its way into the Vex network. Not impossible, but we don't have anything to point at that.
Sure.
I don't know for sure if we've ever seen an Ahamkara in the Vex network in some way.
I can't think of anything either.
Like I can't think of anything off the top of my
I'm
head.
leaning closer to the idea of a fuck, dude. I don't know, dude. This could go either way. This could really go either way. This could either be an
Yeah.
Ahamkara in the network, which, what the hell? Um, yeah, that's what we need is Vex making wishes. Um, or a proto worm like Asa, that just is a non-corrupted version of the worms.
Now the other thing that I suppose this might be, although the not worm portion, I'm not sure how it would fit. Uh Perhaps this is Quoria. You know, being a being of
Mm,
darkness, you know, that and knowing that they've been, you know, hype it's been theorized that we didn't actually kill Quoria and they've just kind of
right.
like been chilling. But this idea that kept its eyes closed and ignored the call, it was still too soon, it decided. So
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's been there for a while and it's biding its time for something.
For something. Yeah, that's the like. It was still too soon. Too soon for what?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm leaning more towards. I'm leaning towards proto worm. I'm
I'm
leaning a lot towards proto worm
That's kind of where I'm at as well. Although I just don't know how a proto
with
worm would have
inkling.
gotten in there. Uh,
Exactly.
but I
It
don't
could just
know.
be a simulation of proto worm.
I suppose that's possible. Yeah.
Because I mean, this is the Vex network. I mean, again, the fact that there's a copy of Osiris floating through here as one of his or not, what did he call him? He didn't call him echoes. Did he call him echoes?
Well, it was reflections were the ones that
Reflections.
were like from his light.
Yep. So like we know one of his reflections are in here, and his reflections got to the Vex network through the Infinite Forest. The Infinite Forest being a place where infinite possibilities are being tested and simulated. Um, so yeah, I mean, and the Vex are very good at simulating things. So I don't know. I not worm. I'm stuck on that portion. To be a worm, but be a not worm.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the thing that I'm getting stuck on. I'm thinking like Asa didn't really talk. Asa talked through
It was
Sloane,
all like, yeah, telepathic
but in
connection.
visions didn't really
Yeah.
give like words or anything. Like I'm really leaning towards this could be a facsimile of Asa or another proto worm.
Yeah.
I'm leaning further and further into that. Again, keying in on those things like why would it be called a not worm? Like that means you are differentiating it from a worm,
Right.
and the proto worms would be but close enough to where like, oh, that's a worm. You're like, no, it's not a worm. That's kind of like my logic with that. Like it's close enough, but you had to make a distinction to call it a not worm. And then the Great Quiet Thing also was another one that like what you're saying. The Great Quiet Thing could be applied to anything, right? Asa didn't talk either. She could be a Great Quiet Thing. Did Riven? No, Riven talks all the time. Riven fucking runs her mouth all the time. I think most of the Ahamkara talk.
Yeah, they seem to be able to talk directly to us, or
Yeah,
they don't have a problem to if they want to.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm leaning towards a proto worm, man. The more and more now that you've poked that in there, I am leaning. I was very much like not worm. I kept thinking, oh, like not darkness, the opposite of worms. Oh, well, that's the traveler. Like he's the light. Like that's the thing. I'm leaning more and more towards this idea of a proto worm.
yeah, I think it seems like one of the most likely. I'm still not 100% off the Ahamkara band. Just the idea of like these contradictions soured and burst, scattering nutrients into the network. Like nutrients makes it sound like contradictions
Right.
created food of some
Yep.
sort, or something this creature would identify
Would
as
feed off
food.
of.
So like,
Yeah. Yep.
and that seems very Ahamkara, but we also know the worms work in very similar ways. So I don't know. It really could go either way.
I'll stick 99-1 again.
Yeah, yeah.
99 proto worm, 1% Ahamkara.
But so we have a reflection or echo of Osiris. We have potentially Asher Mir. We have this other great beast thing that's there that's actively ignoring the call, though has heard it. And then all the versions of the different Ishtar people all scrambling, trying to find their way to warp through the matrix of the network to the incursion point, to the point where this thing landed, because it's going to lift them up out of the network. But only one can be there first. And that one ended up being MSun 12.
Son of a bitch.
But this gives us some confirmation of who else is running around in the Vex network.
The one again, we theorized a long time ago that this episode would have something Praedyth related.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was very much under the assumption like because it was Vex, like
Yeah.
Praedyth would get out and he'd be our like go-to point. That'd be our like point of contact for the missions and stuff like that. But like the fact that he's still being mentioned, meaning like he's still relevant.
They haven't forgotten about
Like
him. He's still
if he
there.
wasn't right, if he was dead or if he was gone, like and this like tell Elsie Praedyth still. Praedyth still what? Praedyth still alive. Praedyth still needs his gun. Praedyth still is looking for you. Praedyth still trying to get a signal. What the fuck is Praedyth still?
Right.
Like, and why do we need to tell Elsie? Can't we just tell the Vanguard? Can we tell Osiris? Can we tell someone else? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. All right.
But so that is where we're going to leave it off for this episode. We'll pick up the rest of the Polyphony lore book next time. But yeah, some really interesting stuff here.
All this is happening like in the background during the season. Like these are things
Yep.
that are happening during this season. Okay.
Or in this case, like kind of before, you know, at the advent of the episode happening. Like all this is happening in the network, just as this thing arrives.
Yeah. Echo control, pretty powerful.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do some powerful shout outs.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple here. We're slowly starting to catch up, but we'll get through a few more. So the first one here comes to us from our Gmail, and they say, "Hello, I had a theory that I wanted to share with you guys. In the last episode, you talked about how Savathun's ship came out from the tear in reality and destroyed the Kyugu ships led by T'Qual. When I heard about that tear, I thought about the spawn effect that the small hive ships have in game, where they come out of a
Oh
flat,
yeah,
blackish green portal,
yeah.
and was wondering if the tear T'Qual described was the same thing. I
I
did
think so.
It sounds likely. I did some research and found that the hive get most of their magic from the deep. So I was thinking those portals they come out of in game could be portals to some hive magic in between space in the deep sort of thing. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'm happy that you're continuing to make your amazing content. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
no,
I think when we were doing that, we theorized that it might be like a tear into the ascendant plane.
yep. And
Uh,
that like hive magic in between space, it yeah, that's the ascendant plane for
that's
sure.
the ascendant plane. Yep. That's how they're able to get as many ships as they can into any. The ascendant plane operates very similarly to the Vex network. Um, they can they can manipulate the space, and there's evidence of this in the what are the missions? The battleground missions for Season of the Defiant, where Mara is helping us break into pyramid ships that are actually in orbit, and get trapped people out of there. Because in those missions we enter the ascendant plane, and it's just like a hop, jump, and a skip. It's like a, boop, 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 and we're in the portal ships now. We're inside the pyramid ships. Whereas like really, we started our run in the EDZ, and now we're in fucking space. And it was literally like a
Yeah.
5-second run for us. So space in the ascendant plane exists differently than what it does. It can connect different points in our reality. And again, like I said, it's a what would normally take, like, the original trip to the moon took 4 days to get there. We can get there over the course of 14 seconds now because of the ascendant plane. So it's very much, that's exactly what's happening. It is a tear in reality that's connecting our reality to the ascendant plane, and then all those ships poured out. And like I said, like you were describing here, the magic, it's their magic is just their version of like using darkness, using powers from the deep. So it just happens to have greenness with it. It just happens to be in like runes and symbols and stuff. That's just their understanding of how to use it. So yeah, that's a you hit the I think you hit the nail on the head here. That is exactly what's happening.
Yeah. No, I'm very much of the opinion that same effect that we see with hive ships is probably exactly what the Kugu stared down.
Yep.
And you know, didn't have a point of reference for it like we do. So,
Yeah.
so yeah. But thank you for that. Always fun to do some theory discussing. Our next one here has some more theory discussion around the Kyugu. This one also from our Gmail says, "Hello, I am Edward," and they do say we're allowed to use their name. And they say, I'm a big fan of the show. I started listening around the second quarter of 2022. My job allows me to basically have music or podcasts or whatever playing for the whole workday. So the long format of your show is a godsend. I love listening to you both. Your passion for the game is clear and motivating. I main a hunter, and like a hunter, I have always played solo. This week, for the first time, I feel like I have something to contribute to your discussions regarding the origins of the pyramid ship on the Kugu's home planet. As we learned a few weeks ago from the lore tab on Microcosm, the precursor race that became the Witness helped shape several planets into supporting life. They would have had to get to those planets, possibly using the pyramid ships. I wonder if they maybe left some of those ships behind that were buried and then became overgrown by the planet, and would then be the pyramid ship, the Kyugu, the mountain, the Kyugu knew. Curious to hear your thoughts. P.S. My wife and I are welcoming a new fire team member in November, and I have managed to convince her to let me name her Mara.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
So, first off,
All of my
congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. All of my animals are Destiny themed or video game themed. So I've got Cade 6, Saint 14. Those are the Huskies. We have Mara and Uldren Sov. They are true brother and sister littermates, cats, and they both act as such, as does Cade and Saint. And then I've got Squall Lionheart from Final Fantasy VIII. And I tried to get Ultimacia or Edia or Renoa, but I was reduced to Shiva for his sister. But yeah, no, um, I like this idea. Obviously, when we were reading through this one, through the Kogu stuff, the pyramid, the idea of the mountain, I kept thinking of it as, oh, it's a mountain. No, the further and further we got into it, it's a pyramid ship.
Yeah.
It's flat out a pyramid ship. Darkness is emanating from it. I think you are really close to hitting the nail on the head. I think if that pyramid ship was there, and then the witness became the witness and started sectioning off dissenters, this could have been a dissenter that was like sectioned off, right? um or whatever entity, like the beast that was near it, um could have been part of the pyramid ship. I don't know. Again, there's a lot of like unknowns with the Kogu stuff,
Hmm.
but I think that pyramid ship. I think you're right. I think it obviously was a pyramid ship. It was part of the witnesses' fleet of like making planets or whatever. And because we do know that the pyramid stuff, that is just natural architecture
Yeah.
for the precursor race.
Yeah.
We see that in that little model of their original city, that's inside the Salvation's Edge, as well as in the cutscenes that Zavala was in. Um, so we know that that's just like their natural ships, is what it seems like. It wasn't something that like, the witness became the witness and then started creating these pyramid ships everywhere. That is just their natural being. Um, and we even saw that in the strike too. Like while we're in the strike, we saw their architecture, and Ghost is like, this is like their natural stuff. Like this is just how they like things to look. So if that is a ship from the precursor race, and went there and then was possibly sectioned off or left there or abandoned there or whatever, that would make sense. And then again, like all the darkness that was like that powered that ship. Now I guess that's kind of the question there. We don't know when the witness started to like fully accept darkness and like give up the light, because do we know if their precursor race actually used the light, or if
100%.
they
Now,
did?
I don't think they used it in the way that we, as directly as the Guardians do.
Sure.
But they made reference in the Entelechy book of like using the gardener's tools.
That's
So,
right. That's right. So they have used the light before. We know they like using darkness. That they are so ancient that they have such a mastery over both forces. They just choose to use darkness more often than not.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I could see that being a thing. I could see that ship being part of their we're gonna go terraform stuff with our pyramid ships, and then they get the pyramid ships lands on the Kogu's original planet, and they're like, oh well, this didn't work. Okay, bye. We'll see you later. Like no big deal, no loss. And then the darkness that's inherent to that pyramid ship just starts spilling into the because we even kind of theorized that like that original like what the cephalopod with tentacles and one arm sticking out
Hmm.
of his chest that was the original Kogu,
Yep.
that could have even been something that was a disciple or something like that. That could have been a final thing from another race that just happened to crash land here and then was eaten by this other creature and started making babies of this thing and procreating, and now you've got a whole other species of stuff. That's again that's the idea of the traveler and the gardener, of just like let things grow. But then the idea of darkness comes along and says, no, we've got to prune, we've got to kind of shape the garden into what it needs to be. And it's that harmony of like, let things grow, but let things grow that are helpful, or that I deem as helpful type thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I yeah, I think again, you guys are hitting it on the head. Y'all are starting to think like us. I'm scared now.
Gonna put you out of a job.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Uh, but no, so thank you for sending that in. I'm glad that you enjoy the episodes that we put out, and wishing you and the impending little Mara all the best. But say to everybody else as well, if you liked what you heard and you want to support us in some way, best thing to do, leave a review or a rating on your platform of choice, or tell a friend. If you want to reach out, got questions or a theory of your own, you can do so on Twitter at Myths and Stories, on YouTube, youtube.com/@mythsandstories, or YouTube, mythsandstories@gmail.com. And you may hear yourself as a future shout out.
Yeah. I'm gonna thank the 2 members of the team that we can't ever remember their fucking names.
The other Ishtar scientists.
The other Ishtars. The only 3, and the only reason why I can remember Shim is because it was just fucking sad.
Yeah.
Obviously, Maya and Chiyomi and Shim and Dave that I've dubbed him. I think it's Dave. I don't know. Maybe I just have. I don't think it's Dave either. Like, that's the worst part. It's like I'm so convinced now that it's Dave. I know it's not Dave now. Yeah. So thanks, Dave and other guy, for being a scientist and continuing to experiment in positive ways. We don't need evil Maya experimenting ways. That's bad. So yeah, that's it. Anything else, Smith?
That's it.
Alrighty. Well, then, from all of us lore daddies to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next time.
You found your people. Guardians do love their myths and stories.